Have you ever wondered how people long ago fell in love? Not the way we do today with texts and calls, but thousands of years ago, when there were no phones, no social media, not even paper in most places. Did lovers whisper under the stars? Did they carve their feelings into stone? Did knights in the medieval world really sing about love that could never be theirs? Tonight, we're going to travel back through time, across ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, through candlelit castles of the Middle Ages, into the handwritten letters and early Valentines of the modern world, to discover how people loved long ago. So settle in, let your mind drift, because this is not the history of wars and kings. This is the history of the heart. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Now imagine this. Thousands of years ago, long before electricity, long before cars and phones, even before books were common, people lived under the same wide sky you see today. At night, they looked up at the moon, just as you can right now. They saw the same glowing circle of light. They traced the same stars, and they felt the same pull in their hearts that we still feel, the pull of love. Picture a small village thousands of years ago. The houses are simple huts made of clay or wood, and the air smells of burning firewood. A young man sees a girl he admires at the well, where she draws water every morning. His heart beats a little faster, though he doesn't fully understand why. He wants to smile at her, to share a word, maybe to give her something, even something as small as a flower he picked from the field. That small desire, that soft spark in his heart, is love in its earliest, simplest form. Love is older than writing. It is older than music. It is older than history itself. We know this because when archaeologists dig up ancient sites, they don't only find weapons or tools. They also find tokens, rings made of bone, carvings of two people holding hands, or inscriptions that whisper words of affection. Even in the earliest days of humanity, people felt the need to express this invisible bond. They wanted to say, I see you. I care for you. You matter to me. And the most magical part? That hasn't changed. Whether it's today in a busy modern city or thousands of years ago in a quiet village, the feeling is the same. Hearts race, palms sweat, and the world feels brighter when love is present. Love, in many ways, is the great constant of human life. Now think of the mysteries of those ancient nights. No social media, no texting, no long phone calls that stretch late into the evening. Instead, imagine two people sitting quietly beside a fire. The flames crackle, sparks rise into the night sky, and silence hangs around them. One person steals a glance at the other, wondering if the feeling is returned. That shy glance, that quiet moment, is just as powerful as any modern love story. Of course, love was not always simple. In every culture, there were rules and traditions that shaped how people could show their feelings. In some societies, marriages were arranged, and love had to find a way to grow afterward. In others, secret romances blossomed, hidden away from parents or kings or strict laws. And sometimes, love was so powerful that it broke through all rules, leaving behind stories we still tell today. When you think about it, love is a kind of time traveler. It slips quietly through centuries, unchanged in its essence. The ways people expressed it might differ. A carved stone in Rome, a poem in Greece, a secret song in the medieval world, or a Valentine's card in later centuries. But the heartbeat behind it, the quiet whisper of, "I want to be close to you," that has always remained the same. And perhaps that is why this story matters tonight. It reminds us that we are not alone in our feelings. The flutter in your chest when you care for someone, people felt it 10,000 years ago. The longing in your heart when you miss someone far away, ancient lovers felt that too. The joy of holding someone's hand, even for just a moment, that joy has been shared across thousands of years, billions of times. So as we begin this journey through history, keep this thought close. Love is not just your story or my story, but humanity's story. It is the thread that connects us to the people who came before us, the farmers, the poets, the queens, the knights, the everyday souls who lived, laughed, cried, and loved long ago. Tonight, as you listen, let yourself drift into their world. Imagine walking through ancient markets, hearing songs in languages long forgotten, or standing in a medieval courtyard, listening to a knight recite his devotion. Imagine the letters, the gifts, the smiles, the secret glances. All of it was love. All of it was real. And that is where our journey begins, with the mystery of love across time. When we step back into the ancient world, love looks both familiar and strange. These civilizations, Egypt, Greece, and Rome, lived thousands of years apart from us, yet their stories of the heart still echo in our own lives. Let's begin in ancient Egypt. Imagine the Nile River flowing calmly under the sun, with papyrus reeds swaying in the breeze. Along its banks, families built homes, farmers worked their fields, and poets composed words of affection. Egyptians did not see love as something temporary or fragile. They saw it as eternal. Husbands and wives often prepared to be buried side by side, so that in the afterlife they would be reunited. Death, in their eyes, was not the end of love, but the continuation of it. They wrote poems about desire and longing, carving their feelings into stone or painting them on the walls of tombs. One surviving poem reads, "My beloved is sweet. Her voice is like honey. Her gaze is more beautiful than stars." Can you picture it? A civilization that built giant pyramids and temples, still pausing to write about the sweetness of hearing a lover's voice. Now drift further west, to ancient Greece. The Greeks thought about love in a way that was both philosophical and poetic. They did not settle for one word to describe such a vast feeling. Instead, they created many. Eros was passionate, fiery, and physical, the love of desire. Philia was the deep bond between friends, built on loyalty and trust. Storge was the natural affection between parents and children. And agape, perhaps the most beautiful, was selfless love, love that gives without expecting anything in return. Imagine walking through Athens, past white marble statues and columns. Philosophers like Plato and Socrates debated what love really meant. Poets recited verses under olive trees. For the Greeks, love was not only an emotion, but also a puzzle worth solving, a mystery worth studying. They believed love shaped society as much as it shaped individuals. And then came Rome. If Greece gave love words, Rome gave it rituals. Romans exchanged gifts like polished stones, carved ivory rings, or even locks of hair tied with ribbon. Lovers scratched messages on city walls, simple confessions that still survive. In Pompeii, for example, archaeologists found graffiti that says, "I love the girl who lives here." Just think about that. Someone, nearly 2,000 years ago, stood outside a home and etched those words into stone, never knowing we would read them today. Roman poets like Ovid wrote books filled with advice about romance, teaching men and women how to flirt, how to win affection, and how to hold on to love once it was found. They celebrated the thrill of new attraction, the pain of jealousy, and the sweetness of reunion. In Rome, love was everywhere, in the marketplaces, in the theaters, and even in the politics of powerful rulers. Julius Caesar himself was known not just as a leader, but also as a man who fell deeply in love. But here's the most striking part. Across these three ancient worlds, despite differences in language and culture, love was always at the center of human life. Egyptians saw it as eternal. Greeks studied it like a science of the soul. Romans treated it as something to celebrate in everyday life, carving it into their walls for all to see. When we read their poems, see their carvings, or hear their stories, we realize something powerful. They were just like us. Their world may have been different, filled with chariots, temples, and torches, but their hearts longed for the same things. A smile, a touch, a promise, a connection. So, as we leave the ancient world behind, carry this thought with you. The love you feel today, in your own life, is part of a much older story. It stretches back through Egypt, Greece, and Rome, linking your heart to theirs across thousands of years. Love, it seems, was never new. It has always been here, waiting, guiding, and holding humanity together. Now let us step gently into the medieval world. The Middle Ages, a time when towering castles rose over green hills, when knights in shining armor rode through villages, and when love often carried a touch of mystery, secrecy, and poetry. Life in the medieval era was far from easy. The world was filled with battles for land, strict social classes, and a heavy influence of the church. But even in this demanding age, the human heart still longed for connection. People still sang, still dreamed, still carved out small spaces for tenderness. One of the most fascinating traditions of the medieval period was courtly love. Imagine a grand stone castle, its halls lit by flickering torches. A noblewoman sits at a long wooden table, surrounded by music and chatter. A knight enters, his armor glinting faintly in the light. He does not come to fight, but to declare his devotion. Kneeling before her, he promises loyalty, courage, and honor, offering not just his sword but his heart. This tradition was often less about real romance and more about ideals. Courtly love was a way to celebrate admiration, to lift women onto pedestals of beauty and virtue, and to encourage knights to act nobly. It was love as poetry, love as inspiration. Songs and poems of courtly love spread across Europe, carried from castle to castle by wandering musicians. These musicians, known as troubadours, were like the pop stars of their time. They traveled with lutes and flutes, performing verses about secret glances, unspoken longing, and the beauty of unattainable love. Picture a quiet courtyard where villagers gather to listen. A troubadour begins to sing, his voice carrying into the night. His song is about a lady he can never truly have, a love pure but unreachable, and yet everyone listening sighs because they understand the feeling. But love in the medieval world was not only for nobles and castles. It lived in the hearts of ordinary people too. Imagine a farmer in a small village. He wakes at dawn to tend his fields, but in the evening, he carves a small wooden heart for the girl he admires. Or a baker who slips an extra loaf of bread into the basket of someone he quietly loves. In a world without Instagram posts or text messages, love was shown through simple, thoughtful acts. A smile at the well, a flower left on a doorstep, a whispered promise under the stars. Of course, medieval love had its challenges. Marriages were often arranged, especially among the wealthy, where families cared more about alliances and land than about feelings. Many couples entered marriage as strangers, and yet, over time, many found genuine affection growing between them. Shared laughter, shared struggles, and shared children built bonds stronger than any contract. The church also played a powerful role. Love and marriage were tied closely to faith, with ceremonies blessing unions and reminding couples that their love was part of something greater. Priests spoke of love not just as passion, but as a holy commitment. Still, the medieval world left us with countless love stories, some real, some legendary. Think of Tristan and Isolde, a tragic tale of forbidden passion, or the stories of King Arthur and Guinevere, where loyalty and love collided in heartbreaking ways. These tales, told by candlelight, have survived for centuries because they capture the universal truth. Love is rarely simple. When we imagine medieval love, it may seem distant or foreign, wrapped in castles, knights, and songs. But beneath the armor and stone walls, the emotions were familiar. Hearts raced, people blushed, longing stretched across nights. Small acts carried enormous meaning. And isn't that the most comforting thought? That even in an age so far removed from ours, where letters were rare and life was harsh, people still found ways to express tenderness. They still carved their initials, still whispered words under the moon, still risked everything for someone who made their world brighter. So as we leave this age of knights and troubadours, remember this. The medieval world teaches us that love is both noble and simple. It can inspire poetry and music, but it can also live quietly in the smallest acts of kindness. It reminds us that no matter how much the world changes, love always finds a way. As the Middle Ages slowly gave way to new ways of thinking, a fresh chapter in the history of love began. We step now into the early modern world, the 1600s and 1700s, a time when poetry blossomed, letters carried hearts across distance, and traditions began to look more familiar to us today. The world was changing. Printing presses filled cities with books, literacy spread, and ideas traveled faster than ever before. Love, once expressed through carved tokens and songs by troubadours, now found its way into letters, journals, and even the first Valentine's cards. For the first time in history, ordinary people could record their feelings in their own words, and many of them did. Imagine a young woman sitting by candlelight in her small room. The air smells faintly of ink and parchment. She dips her quill into ink and writes carefully. I count the days until I see you again. Across the miles, her beloved may receive the letter weeks later, unfolding the paper slowly, his hands trembling with the thrill of her words. These letters were not just communication. They were lifelines, treasures kept in boxes, read again and again until the ink began to fade. Some of these love letters survive today, hidden in old libraries and private collections. Reading them is like opening a time capsule, hearing the voices of people long gone, but still alive in their tenderness. They speak of longing, devotion, and the hope that love will survive distance and time. It was also during this period that Valentine's Day grew into a widely recognized celebration. Long before it became commercial with cards and chocolates, it was a day for handmade tokens. Lovers would fold paper into delicate shapes, draw little hearts and flowers, and write verses of affection. These small gifts carried enormous meaning. To give or receive one was to feel chosen, cherished, and remembered. At the same time, society still clung to older traditions. Among the wealthy, marriages were often arranged, based not on passion but on property, politics, and family connections. Love in these unions sometimes came later, if at all, and yet, history shows us that many couples, even those brought together for practical reasons, discovered affection over time. They learned to laugh together, to share burdens, and to build trust. Slowly, society began to shift toward the idea that love should not only follow marriage, but sometimes even lead it. Writers and poets of the early modern world also left us beautiful reflections on love. Shakespeare, in the late 1500s and early 1600s, gave us sonnets and plays filled with the joys and sorrows of the heart. His lines, "Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds," still ring true today, reminding us that true love is steady, enduring, and faithful even when the world changes around it. Across Europe, music too became a vessel for expressing affection. Composers wrote sonatas dedicated to patrons and lovers. The sound of a harpsichord or a violin in a quiet chamber carried the same longing as words on a page. Music, like love itself, traveled across boundaries of class and language. The early modern world was also an age of exploration. Ships crossed oceans, carrying people to new lands. With them traveled stories of love separated by seas, of promises whispered before departure, of rings exchanged before long voyages. Distance made love more fragile, but also more powerful. To wait for someone for months, even years, required deep faith and hope. Many of these reunions were bittersweet, but they reveal the strength of the human heart, willing to endure uncertainty for the chance of love fulfilled. What makes this era so remarkable is how familiar it feels. The love letters, the Valentine's cards, the poems, and the music, all of these are echoes we can still recognize. In fact, much of how we imagine romance today was shaped during this period. The idea that love should be celebrated openly, cherished in writing, and remembered with gifts became part of the culture then, and it has never left us. So as you picture the early modern world, don't only think of powdered wigs, long dresses, and candlelit halls. Think also of the quiet moments. The letter slipped into a pocket, the whispered promise at a doorway, the careful folding of a Valentine's note. These were the threads of love, woven gently into everyday life. And as we leave this era behind, remember, it teaches us that love is both fragile and strong. Fragile because distance and duty can separate people. Strong because words, promises, and small tokens can carry it across oceans and years. In this way, love in the early modern world begins to look very much like our own. A reminder that no matter the century, the heart always finds a way to speak. As we step back from our journey, from the sands of ancient Egypt to the marble courts of Greece, to the busy streets of Rome, through the stone castles of the medieval world, and into the candlelit letters of the early modern age, one truth becomes clear: love has always been with us. The ways people expressed it changed over time. In Egypt, lovers wrote poetry on papyrus. In Greece, they gave love names and debated its meaning. In Rome, they scratched it into walls for the world to see. In the medieval age, knights sang of it in courtyards, while villagers showed it through simple kindness. In the early modern world, people wrote letters, exchanged valentines, and turned love into something both public and deeply personal. But beneath all of these traditions, the heart remained the same: a longing for connection, a wish to be seen, a hope that another person would say, "You matter to me." If we pause for a moment and think about it, love is one of the very few things that connects us across centuries without losing any of its meaning. Food has changed, language has changed, clothes, music, technology, all of these are different now. But love feels the same in your chest as it did for someone thousands of years ago. Imagine holding someone's hand today. That warmth, that comfort, that unspoken closeness. It is the same hand holding that happened beside fires in ancient villages, or in hidden gardens in Rome, or in the shadows of medieval castles. The feeling does not age. It never fades. And love teaches us something deeper too. It teaches us about resilience. Think of the countless couples who were separated by wars, by distance, by family rules. Many could not be together, but their love still lived in their songs, their letters, their carvings. Some waited years, some never reunited, and yet their words, their gestures, their memories still carried their love forward. Even when love could not be fulfilled, it still left behind beauty. Love also teaches us about simplicity. In every age, the grand gestures mattered less than the small ones. The farmer's carved wooden token in the medieval world, the baker's extra loaf of bread, the whispered note hidden in a valentine. These are what stayed in the heart. Even today, we remember the simple kindnesses of those we love more than any great display. It reminds us that love doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to be real. And perhaps most importantly, love teaches us that we are not alone. Sometimes, when we feel heartache or when we miss someone deeply, it can feel as if no one else could understand. But the truth is, billions of people before you have felt exactly that. The Egyptians who wrote poems of longing, the Romans who carved confessions into stone, the knights who sang songs of impossible devotion. They all felt the same ache, the same joy, the same longing you feel. To know this is to feel less alone, as though the entire history of humanity is sitting beside you, whispering, "We understand. We have been here too." So what does love ultimately teach us? That it is timeless, that it is universal, that it is the quiet thread weaving every human life together, from the first dawn of civilization to this very moment as you listen. Love is both fragile and indestructible. Fragile because it can be hurt by distance, silence, or loss. Indestructible because even when it ends, it leaves behind echoes, stories, poems, memories, feelings that never truly vanish. As you drift into sleep tonight, carry this thought with you. You are part of this great story of love. Your heart is not separate from history, but woven into it. Every smile you give, every hand you hold, every kind word you share continues this ancient tradition. You are not only living your own love story, you are continuing humanity's love story, one that began thousands of years ago and will never end. Close your eyes, breathe deeply. Let the comfort of this truth settle over you. Love has always been here. It will always be here. And in that knowledge, there is peace, there is warmth, and there is rest. And so, dear listener, our journey through the ages of love comes to a gentle close. From the sands of Egypt to the stone castles of the medieval world, and into the candlelit letters of the modern age, we've seen that love has always been the same heartbeat guiding humanity forward. As you drift into sleep tonight, let this thought rest with you. The story of love is timeless, and your own story is part of it. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to gently tap the like button, subscribe for more soothing bedtime history, and share this story with someone who might need a little peace tonight. Now close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the timeless comfort of love carry you into dreams. Good night.